When we think about the end of an empire, we usually picture some final epic battle, right? A capital in flames. But that's not where we're going today. We're going somewhere way more important, a quiet, dusty frontier. This is the place where a mighty empire first realized it could die. This isn't a story about a city falling, it's about a mindset breaking. This quote, it just gets right to the heart of what we're talking about. We're not looking at the final, spectacular collapse. No, we're searching for that first hairline crack, that one moment where the very idea of an empire started to come apart at the seams. So to really get why that fracture was so important, you first have to understand the wall. For centuries, the Sasanian Persian Empire wasn't just another superpower. It was like a permanent feature of the world. It felt eternal, like it had always been there and always would be. I mean, just look at their frontier. It was a masterpiece of military power. You had these incredibly fortified lines, packed with disciplined soldiers. And backing them up, just the pride of the empire, the cataphracts. These were elite, heavy armored cavalry, basically the tanks of the ancient world. Their reputation alone was a weapon. But here's the crucial part. There were actually two walls. There was the physical wall of forts and soldiers, sure, but behind it was a psychological wall. This was the idea, the myth, that the Sasanians were simply invincible. An idea built over centuries that made most enemies think twice before even trying anything. This belief, this was Persia's greatest armor. But then, something new starts to stir in the desert. A new force emerges, and this enemy is completely different from anyone the Sasanians had ever fought before. This wasn't just going to be another border skirmish. This was a collision of two totally different worlds. You know, from the Persian side, this probably looked like business as usual. Some desert tribes causing trouble again. They had a playbook for this. Send in the heavy troops, crush them, and restore order. A simple, predictable problem with a familiar solution. But they were so wrong. This wasn't a raid for loot. This was an army unified by a powerful new faith. And they fought with this blinding intensity. They weren't there to show off their power. They were there to win, using movement and strategy. And you can see the mismatch right here. Sasanian warfare was all about ceremony, these perfect, rigid formations, and just overwhelming brute strength. The Arab forces? Totally different game. They were all about speed, flexibility, hitting you on the flank, and patiently waiting to exploit any gap you gave them. Persia was about to get a very brutal lesson in a new kind of warfare. And this brings us right to the battle itself. So picture it, the desert frontier at dawn. The air is still. You can see Persia's army, this perfect, shimmering line of order, with sunlight glinting off thousands of helmets. And then, the chaos begins. The first move isn't a cavalry charge. It's a storm. Thousands upon thousands of arrows suddenly fly up, so many that they literally block out the sun. There's a moment of silence, and then they crash down into shields, into armor, into men. And that perfect Sasanian formation starts to fray. And then came the dust. Kicked up by hundreds of charging horses, the ground itself just erupts into this thick, choking sandstorm. It swallows entire units. And in a flash, the Sasanians' biggest advantage, visual command of the battlefield, is just gone. Commanders can't see their troops, troops can't see their officers. Inside that storm of sand, the rigid Sasanian system just falls apart. Their whole way of fighting was based on visual signals and perfect order. It can't work when you can't see 5 feet in front of you. Discipline evaporates. The chain of command just shatters. The whole grand battle just disintegrates. It becomes 100 small, desperate skirmishes. You have pockets of Sasanian infantry totally cut off, fighting back to back. You have riders emerging like ghosts out of the dust, striking fast and then vanishing again. The entire beautiful war machine is reduced to a bunch of confused, broken pieces. So, when the dust finally settles, the real cost of this battle becomes clear. And it wasn't something you could measure in territory lost or soldiers killed. No, the real damage was much, much deeper. The Sasanian Empire didn't fall that day, not even close. Its borders were still there on the map. But for the first time in centuries, it had been seriously wounded. It had been outfought. And the story of that wound? Well, that story traveled faster than any army. In this was the psychological fracture. It's that moment the myth of the unbreakable wall was shattered for good. The damage wasn't to their forts.
It was to the Sasanian spirit. It was a seed of doubt, planted in the mind of every single soldier and every single general.
The shadow of this one defeat would hang over every battle that came after. Because once a civilization truly believes it can be beaten, the next fight is already half lost. Certainty is replaced by hesitation, and hesitation on the battlefield will get you killed. And that really leaves us with this final thought, doesn't it? We focus so much on the armies and the weapons that decide the fates of empires, but maybe the most powerful weapon in history isn't a sword or a siege engine, but just an idea. The simple, devastating idea that you can be beaten.